Welcome to the Board Game Barbecue Podcast, episode 244. My name is Mitch. I'll be your host today, and this episode is brought to you by Advent Games and our Patreons. I am joined here today by my co-host Adrian up in Brisbane. How you going, buddy?
I'm doing good. Technically, this is episode 244D. I'm not afraid to admit we've had technical issues. That is part of the journey, so it's fine.
It is indeed. And
yeah.
To help us along with our technical issues, I think I'm going to blame Adam on that one. It's the guys from Motor City Gameworks, Adam Hill and Matt Riddle. How you doing?
We are so glad to be here.
We are. You know, it's technical difficulties. Let's think about this, right? Tell your grandparents that we're talking to two buddies in Australia and we can see each other. I mean, it's wild, right? So we're all here. We're having a good time. We're enjoying modern technology.
Exactly. Here on the 3rd anniversary episode. That's not even a big deal, but it's a big deal. Like, you need to know, 3 years. That's awesome.
Yep.
Congratulations, y'all.
Yeah, thank you. It is a big milestone for us, and we're a bit chuffed by it. We've had some great responses from our community. Some we might talk about a bit later. And I think that for us, that's probably the biggest thing. We've built a bit of a community here in Australia. We run some game days, and we have Discord, Facebook groups, and things like that. And it's really been a group of people that have come together around it, and it's pretty humbling.
It is awesome. I know we earlier, but hey, we're try number 4. Let's do this again. And I was talking about the Discord, and it's the only one I'm a member of. And I pop in every now and then just to kind of, like you said, your folks are always chatting, talking about different games, talking about pretty much anything, as it turns out, which is fun. Like I said, it brings me back to my old forum days, and I'm happy to be here and happy to participate when I can. And also, I know what you and I had talked briefly, probably several months ago about if there's ever a chance we get out there. We'd love to come to, I don't want to call it barbecue con, but I know you guys have got your big game days and stuff, and that'd be fantastic. It's funny, we actually do work with your government in the job that I do, and whenever people even talk about Australia, it's like, oh yeah, we'll totally go. Like, all this, there's like 100 million volunteers. When it's like Poland, people are like, I don't want to go to Poland. But Australia, people line up for Australia. Nothing against my Polish friends, by the way.
Nothing against Poland.
It's just cold.
I don't know why.
It's not.
Here's the deal, Matt. This is what went wrong here. I made a game with Clayton Hargrave called Godspeed. Yeah. It released at the same time as COVID. And so it did not do well.
Understood.
In sales.
Who had a bigger debut?
By far, COVID. More people saw that one. And here's the deal. As the ratings came in from the folks who did play it, they were really great. Yeah, except in Poland. Yeah. And I'm not kidding. Really? We took 3s and 4s in Poland all day. Like, I don't know what we did that let them down, but they do not like my work as a designer. And now here we are on a podcast, and I want to be clear. That wasn't Adam saying something about Poland. That was totally Matt. I'm in on Poland. I don't know what I did to offend y'all, but this is probably it.
I'm positive Poland is lovely. It's just a little close to the Ukraine right now. I think that's that's probably the main concern. That's also why we're suddenly doing business with Poland, by the way, is because it's close to the Ukraine, and I'm in the war machine industry. So here we are.
Yeah. But usually people in the US are like, yeah, I'll come to Australia. And then you say, you realize it's like a 14-hour flight from your West Coast. And they go, ooh, maybe not.
Yeah, no, I am certainly aware. And to your point, it's not I think as I get older, travel becomes less attractive. But, we'll see. Hey, you never know. One day.
Yeah, we have to go back to the future to get to Australia. Like, we've got to fly to the West Coast so that it's earlier, and then we fly earlier until we get to tomorrow.
Yeah. Well,
that's so weird. Hey,
for us going the other way though, we arrive in LA before we left.
Exactly. It's fantastic.
One out.
It's fantastic.
It is kind of cool now though, because years ago, there was no advantage to it. We still got movies 2 years, 3 years after America. But now that we live in the future and they do a midnight premiere, we get them first.
Yeah.
Which is pretty nice.
Good. Yeah.
Because they didn't used to do those world premiere releases. So we never had that. So we would get films
Enjoy Encino Man in 2006. They were like, here's Encino Man.
Exactly.
It happens with board games now. Like, we still get games like years after the States, right, Mitch?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, don't ask me about the Hoplomachus fulfillment. We won't go there. But anyway, so on to a bit of board gaming. So you guys have had a pretty busy last couple of years, I guess, with Three Sisters, then Motor City. You're on a roll, and you've got some. Well, let's talk about Motor City, because that's we haven't spoken to you since that hit. I think last time we were talking, that was just on the way out. You know, how did that go? It's all done and dusted now. I believe everyone's got their copies, and you happy with the reception that it's had, or
really happy? We're thrilled with the reception. You know, it is a heavier game than the previous ones that we've made. And so it is definitely, you know, that shows it's not for everyone. And so there are some people, it's not. Now, Three Sisters has been received incredibly well, is wonderful. People are really excited about it. Motor City has been received really well. Critical acclaim has been great. We've had a few people who are really well known in board gaming come out and say some really nice things about it. And we're really appreciative of that. It's everyone who plays it. Most people like it a lot. And so we're really happy about that. It is a little different than what we've done in the past, different than Matt and Ben did with Fleet, different than what we did with Three Sisters. So it's a little more of a load cognitively, but it's been really well received, and most folks are really enjoying it. Overall, we couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it's been super fun to kind of get it out there, and I think as well, there's always a risk, right? We had this, I don't know, this goal, right, to create this line of games as we talk about it, like you mentioned, Mitch. Like we had Fleet the Dice game, which was kind of its own thing and something that we were super proud of, and then kind of just, you know, a couple years went by and we had this idea to start a company and do this whole deal, and we're like, well, let's build off of that. Let's continue, you know, kind of using, you know, that sort of core heavier roll and write thing that, you know, people really responded to on Fleet, and then Three Sisters came along, and the fact that, to Adam's point, you know, people are enjoying Motor City, and they are, you know, they can feel the lineage, but also see the differences. You know, I think by default, right, you know, we knew that, you know, when you go, you know, we'll say more complex, right, your audience just shrink a little bit. But, you know, like Adam's saying, once we got the Kickstarter done, you know, fulfillment went great. It was relatively smooth. We had a few stragglers, like, you know, Brazil and a couple other countries that are kind of like literally just getting it. But everybody else, it went pretty tight. And then it got into retail, and retail's going pretty smoothly. So no complaints at all. I mean, it's been really fun for us to kind of, you know, get the opportunity to do that. And it's leading into what we'll talk about in a little bit, our next project, and, you know, kind of looking forward to see, you know, how long are we going to keep doing this, and how many ideas do we have, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, each one is its own individual thing. And, you know, with Motor City being something that, you know, thematically, you know, Ben and I both grew up as engineers. You know, that's what we went to college for. We live in the Detroit area, which means by default you're going to work for automotive companies sometime. So we always joked around about making an engine building game about building engine, like, because that's kind of like what we do here, right? That's what you do in Detroit. You build cars. And then, you know, when, you know, Adam became part of the company, we were talking to him about the idea, and he had this idea that he wanted to work on, you know, mechanically, and it fit thematically, and we kind of put it all together, and, you know, off we went with Motor City. So it was a fun process, and this is always the best part. I say this all the time, and I mean it sincerely. You know, Ben and I have made about 20 games now that have been published and released, you know, and I think Adam's on his third, right?
I think so.
And, you know, so now in a couple with us now that are all in process and coming. So, you know, we've all done this before, and, you know, to varying, we were talking about Godspeed earlier, you know, and about coming out during COVID and all that kind of stuff. And Ben and I have had 20 games, and, you know, a lot of them, they are what they are, right? People like them, and that's great. But what always happens is, you know, whether or not they end up being hits or critically well received, etc., you know, I always think that somebody out there loves this thing that you made, right? It's somebody's favorite something. And just like you guys in the podcast, right? You're somebody's or several somebody's favorite podcast. And that's fantastic, right? Everything else that you do, all the other reasons that we do this kind of thing, all the other benefits that you get, you know, that's always something that makes me happy every time I hear it, right? When someone says, even a game like, you know, we joke about a game like Morocco, which was a relatively ignored Euro game that we did, like, you know, 7-8 years ago, but somebody one time said, hey, that's my favorite kind of Euro-y game from that year. And it's always fun and rewarding, and, you know, just great to hear.
Now available on BGA.
Now available
a beta game.
In beta. Probably permanently in beta, if I'm being honest.
It has to get a certain number of plays before it moves out of beta.
Yeah, are either of you all BGAers?
Recent convert, because I didn't like it. I used to hate it because, mainly my own sort of stupidity, I ended up playing way too many games. I was involved in loads of different games. I didn't know what game was what, where I was, what I was doing. and I've just culled that right back. And I did get almost back to that precipice again of just going, screw this, I'm out. I'm not doing this again, because I was up to like 7 games at the same time. But I've culled it right back to just 2. And 2 is a good number for me. I'm playing Barrage and I'm playing Carnegie, and that's it. Oh. I'm not going higher again, because if I go too high again, I end up just playing 4 games of Barrage at the same time. Then I get really lost. Even though I love it, I just get lost. So
you've always had troubles with that getting too high line, haven't you, Adrian?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, I mean, I don't play Carnegie or Barrage. I tend to stay lighter on there for kind of the reasons that you described, Adrian. I'll often have more games going, but I tend towards games that I can immediately pick up what's happening when I look at it. Like I'm playing a little bit of Arc Nova, and I'm loving Arc Nova, but Arc Nova is actually they're pretty micro turns, right? There's not a lot. It's not real deep to figure out what you're doing. So there's a few games on there that I've tried that I've really liked, but it's like, holy cow, I got to spend 5 minutes reading the board to figure out what I was doing yesterday when I took my last turn,
And forgive me if I'm wrong, Arc Nova doesn't have a massive amount of player interaction, right? It's more you're focusing on what you need to achieve.
Fundamentally zero. It's multiplayer solitaire, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
There are some cards that will interact, but you don't even have to use those.
Yeah. We've not used them yet. We always use the solo option, which is on the bottom, rather than the cutthroat option. So
right.
Yeah.
And I play more of the games that you play, Adrian, on there, but I don't play asynchronous. Okay. I have a really hard time remembering where I was in my game of Barrage when I come back to my turn and I have to look and say, okay, what did everyone do?
Yeah.
I wanted to do this, and now is anyone there? Like it's too much data for me to reintegrate, and so I would rather just sit down on BGA and play for 3 hours, and just knock out a game or 2, and then be done. But I do like those games that you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll hook that up. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
That'll be good fun.
I'm in.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on from Motor City then, you got a couple of projects in the works now, and the next one I think that's probably closest to fruition is French Quarter, right?
Yep, yeah, so French Quarter is our, 4th game in the Loaded Roll and Write series. We'll talk about the one you're talking about in a minute, which would be the 5th, I guess, right, by sequence?
Right.
So French Quarter is going to come from us. We've already, we got the Kickstarter page going. We're actually going to launch next week, Tuesday, May 30th. And, the good news is that we're ready. The bad news is we're a little behind where we usually are at this point of the process. I think we're kind of a little farther back in getting the word out than we would like to normally be at this time. But that's okay. I'll be honest. We rely heavily on, our repeat backers, right? Like we know folks that backed Fleet Dice, French Quarter, or Motor City and Three Sisters. We hope they come back, and that's, we're not looking to make. Listen, would we love to make $1 million? Of course we would. But what we learned is that really for games like this, especially when they have a lower price point, retail is that repeated retail is where we really do well. So our goal really is to make sure that we Kickstarter helps us make the best possible product, helps us get some cool stretch goals. We actually this time. We've announced right away that, listen, we're going to team up with 25th Century Games again. They do a great job with us. They're awesome. They're going to help us with the retail release after the fact if everything goes well on the Kickstarter. So, it's gameplay wise, I would say, there's a sort of a puzzle that's kind of unique for our line where it's a spatial puzzle. And, I know, Mitch, you've seen it. And that's kind of something we wanted to do, right? That's a little bit different than what we've done in the past, but it still has the tracks and the bonuses and the powers and all the things that our line of games are that we kind of make in all of our games now. So but I would say, in my opinion, right, it's probably back to the Fleet Dice level from a complexity perspective, right? I would say Three Sisters was an increase above Fleet Dice, and then Motor City was an increase above Three Sisters, and French Quarter is kind of back in that Fleet Dice area. So it still has bonuses, it still has combos, it still has fun action chains, but it's a step easier.
Yeah, I think it adds it adds something different to the others that you guys haven't done before. In that sort of the map, you've got the map of New Orleans there, and you're trying to work out where you can go. It's kind of that, as you said, Matt, that spatial sort of puzzle thing that I haven't seen in any of your games before, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was,
Thank you.
I don't know if it's changed much.
It's a lot like it's got a little taste of like Welcome To, if you've played that, where you got to kind of get numbers in the right places in order to be able to go to certain spaces, but it's a little more flexible than that and works on different directions. And so we really love that part of the game. It's one of the things that we thought made this one unique because like what Matt was saying, what we want to do at Motor City Gameworks is make games that you recognize as familiar. Like, hey, that's a Motor City Gameworks game. That feels like a Motor City Gameworks game, but at the same time has a uniqueness to each game. So you don't feel like you're simply buying the same game with a different skin on it. That's not at all what we want to do. We want unique games, and this one does it really cool. That really cool puzzle is just a great thing. And Ben, when he kind of came up with that, he was on a trip to New Orleans with his wife, and they were a part of a wedding and got to be in one of the parades and all of that. And he just looked at the map on their flight home and was like, there's a game right here.
Yeah, nice. That's cool as. I think that you're definitely right. That's really important to have those points of differences in all your games. As a designer, I've tested a lot of different games with a lot of different designers, and it's always that the strongest games that I've had the most enjoyment out of are when the designers have not just done a similar, almost reskin of a previous game. It's always really nice to see something that's just completely, left of field, but you can still see the little bits of roots in there. But you want that, like a spatial puzzle is fantastic for a roll and write. I'm really looking forward to that. I love spatial puzzles, like the pipeline pipes and the workshop stuff in Horseless Carriage. They're the things that I really enjoy. So in saying that, do you guys feel like Motor City Gameworks will always do roll and writes, or do you see it ever doing something different?
Yep. That's a great question. So there's a lot of layers to this answer, Adrian.
Is it basically I can't talk about it now kind of layers?
No.
I'm going to let Matt go first. I want Matt to go first, and then I'll go.
Yeah, so I would say the factors are, right, Motor City Gameworks is Ben and Adam and I, and we love working together, but we all have busy lives, right? So our current method of the one game a year is going to probably be our future state for as long as I can see forward. And what that really means is, I think we've decided that line of games, right, the loaded roll and writes, is what we do primarily. So until we think we've got the overhead or the ability or the time, all those words, right, everything that goes in everything that we do, to do a second game, right? Maybe you do a spring and a fall Kickstarter, that kind of thing. I would say that as long as people are willing to keep buying them, and as long as they keep getting received well, we're going to keep making them. Now, there may be a day where we don't, part of the the good and the bad of having a line of games, though, is that each game has to live up to the line, right? It has to live up to the standard set by the line. So even like right now, we've got some ideas that we're working on, and they may be good games, and Durango's actually a really good game that actually does live up to the standard of the line, but we have some other options there. We can't just do another roll and write because we need to do one. It has to, it has to be up to the abilities. It has to meet the standards, right? That, like I said. So,
right.
Ben and I have always been, and Adam's actually been a great kind of another voice for us because we've always been a little overly harsh to ourselves. Like I think we were quick to abandon things because we had limited time. We only want to work on things that we both always felt were going to be really good, and we weren't always right. I mean, Back to the Future, that's a good example of one time we were not super right.
I like how this is drifting into now that Adam's involved, we're willing to make crap.
No, I think that's certainly one way to put it. I was going to say that the positive was that you have another voice, and then I say like, no, that's good. There's something here, and because I think sometimes we get because we're all smart guys with different skill sets, but Ben and I are both math engineering types, and Adam brings a little different view. So sometimes we get a little too caught on like something small, some edge where we're like, we can't get past that. Adam's like, it's going to be fine. Let's do this over here, and we'll get back to that later, and we'll figure it out. So that third voice has been great for us to kind of allow us to continue working on things that we may not have had a chance to. So that's a really long way to say, Adrian, that I do think the foreseeable future is as long as there's continued success, we're going to stick to that line. And then what we've been doing lately, honestly, is if we have other designs that we like, we just continuing to work with other publishers, right? We, like there's a whole story about Durango, why that may or may not be a Motor City game, because we have an opportunity with a big publisher potentially. And then we still design card games, we have a party game, and there's all these things that we continue working on as designers, and we continue to have relationships with with other publishers, and we kind of get stuff out that way.
Right. I can say that, okay, what Matt said, all of that's accurate. For the foreseeable future, yes, we're going to be making roll and write games. Loaded roll and write is what we feel like we do best and is our particular niche in the market. Okay, it is what we think we bring that other publishers maybe don't do as well as us, and so that's what we want to do. And so we're focusing there. Now, there are a couple of times that we'll have the conversation about, can you ever imagine a time when we decide to publish a Euro or publish just something else that we've designed? And Matt's right. It's going to take the overhead. It's going to take the capital. It's going to take also time. And the reality is, we do all have jobs. We all are doing that full time. And then the game thing comes in our spare time, and it's still a hobby we love doing. But Matt does almost all of the logistics and the organizational side of actually making the game. Like, he's talking to the manufacturers, he's talking to the distributors, he's keeping track of all of that. And so if he is the one saying, we can't make more than one game a year, I need you to know, no matter what Ben and I say, the truth is we can't make more than one game a year. And so at this point, this is the pace and this is the particular line that we want to create. When we do design other things, and we do, we design together. We design, I've got a couple of designs with some other designers, but we design together and then we pitch it to other publishers, just like every designer does. And so we're not just trying to do like vanity publishing, like, hey, we're just going to keep doing our games because they're all we want. No, we really want to make these Motor City Gameworks loaded roll and writes. That's the line that we're doing right now. And so for the foreseeable future, that's the answer.
Cool.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so you mentioned there, Matt, you brought up Durango, which is the next one that, from listening to your guys' podcast, it's kind of hit my radar because I'm a bit of a Western fan as well in terms of the genre. So tell us a little bit about Durango. And
Mitch, you're the best. Okay, you're the best.
We have an ongoing internal discussion about that theme. So I am the opposite, Mitch. I cannot stand the Western theme.
What?
I do think the game fits the theme very well. So that's the problem, right? Like, if we were going to retheme it, it would be difficult to keep that thematic integration that the game currently has.
You put it in space.
So
that's what you do. You just put it in space.
It would end up in space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so we've got to figure out what's interesting about that game, and I can't say what publisher or what game. But what I can say is that we have a conversation with a publisher that's much larger than us, an international sort of like German publisher who has a very well loved game that we've all played, and there is a design seed that came from that game. We purposely said we want to do a roll and write dice whatever game with some elements of this game that we all love and have all played, and everyone listening to us has probably played.
It's got a very cool and meaningful and influential action selection system that we thought this plays perfectly into roll and write. We can use this in a roll and write design, and it'll be so cool. Yep. And it's come out that way.
It 100% has. So we approached the company and said, hey, if you have any interest in doing X the dice game, we have a roll and write, and they are interested. So the problem it becomes, frankly, that companies like that take a really long time, and we have to protect ourselves as designers and our company. And if we're going to do it with them, they have to be somewhat committed to it. They can't sit down for 2 years and be like, oh, we changed our minds. So we're working with them, because we love Durango, and we think Durango is 100% a game that deserves to be in our line. It could be roll and write, loaded roll and write number 5, if we didn't, theme aside, but could totally be roll and write number 5 if we chose it to be. So we need to make sure that if we're going to make the decision to go to another publisher, it's worth it because of frankly, the size and reach of this publisher. But, we also need to know that they can't just sit on it forever. So that's where Durango's kind of up in the air as far as what it's going to end up being. And it's pretty exciting, and we'll see. But to Adam's point, right, it's got a very fun, recognizable action selection system, and everything else is, you're kind of rolling right stuff, and it works great. It's really, I mean, we got some work to do on solo mode. You know, we're kind of just we had one that was pretty good, but we made a lot of changes. We have to go back to that, but otherwise it's humming. We're real close.
Yeah.
Quick sidebar. I'll only ask Mitch and Adam because they are the Western people. But yes. I know Mitch that supports the Spurs, right? But what are Spurs even used for? What is a spur for? What do you do?
Spur goes on the back of your boots, and it's used to essentially maim the horse.
I was going to use the word goad. It goads the horse forward. Yeah. It gives it a reason to run as if it's been poked on its hind parts.
Yeah.
But why does the wheel on the back thing spin around? What's that about?
Yeah, it just creates a little bit more of a motivation, I guess, than something that's not. So, yeah.
Well, and as you move your boot, as you move your boot down, the point is not to cut the animal. As a stationary metal blade might, it rolls so that it's just poking it repeatedly down its flank rather than slicing.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry, I came up earlier in conversation with something else, and then I was like, I don't even know what they do. So
I don't know how humane spurs are.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're used too universally anymore. I think they're probably a thing of the past.
Let's hope not. I did have to tell Adam to take the Spur dealership out of the game.
As I say, there are no Spurs in Durango. I want to be clear about that. There are no Spurs in Durango.
Not even Tim Duncan.
Not even Tim Duncan.
Fair enough.
Or David Robinson, the Admiral, baby.
Yeah, the Admiral.
So we thought, I thought it would be a good idea, since you guys were essentially playing away, right? As in, like, this is our stadium. You've come to our stadium. You know, we're here doing this thing together. But we thought we'd try and make it a little bit more homely for you guys. And we thought we would do a little cheeky top 3 list on the spot. No prep.
How in the world? Like, we just recorded and I did one of these last night. Okay, yeah. Let's do it.
Well, I hope it's not the same list.
I hope it's not the same one.
I doubt it.
We thought we'd go away from food because you guys don't do a food podcast, right?
It is not a food podcast.
It is not a food podcast.
For the listeners out there who maybe haven't come across the Motor City Gameworks podcast yet, you need to check it out. It's an awesome podcast. It's a great listen, so check that out. But the guys also do it's just kind of evolved, hasn't it? You got tied down into this food thing, and you can't get away from it.
Well, I would say we got tied down to it by Mitch. To some extent, right? I mean, we certainly,
it was,
I mean, as you know, Adam and I are healthy gentlemen, and we like our food. Robust. That's a good word. Robust gentlemen who do enjoy our food, and Ben's certainly not afraid of a good bite either. So we bite by nature. Right? I do appreciate that you listen, Mitch. I do, and I love that you listen, and I love listening to you guys as well. And
absolutely.
It's funny because our format is, well, you guys do have a nice loose format as well, but certainly you've got a lot more board game talk than we tend to. So our format became like, okay, talk about whatever the current project was, and then just chat for a half hour, right? That's kind of what we do, and we talk because we're friends, and we just talk about life, and life seems to be a lot of food. And then you send us that gigantic care package from Australia.
Yeah, if you're going to listen to our podcast, listen to the Australian Snack Extravaganza episode.
It's the best one.
You will hear me vomit on the podcast as I try Vegemite again.
So I also did not like Vegemite, did not vomit. It was just gross. The thing that bothered me the most, and I know I don't want to spend too much time on this, I promise, but were those weird chocolate gummies. They're like
the cheekies, like, right? Is that the cheeky?
Yeah.
Those are not okay.
I did not enjoy those.
Yep.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, though, because I have never had a cheeky. I'm not native Australian, but I don't even need to anymore because the review you guys gave for it did set me up for life. I'm like, I don't need to do that. I'll just stick with the things I like.
Next time I come up there to your house, Adrian, I'm bringing like a kilo bag of cheekies with me.
I mean, they weren't like the worst thing I've ever eaten, but they were strange. Like I don't know.
It's a weird combo for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's like a chocolate gummy.
I would put them in the same category for me as like really bad candy corn. Like, of all the candy options, why would anyone ever choose a Cheeky. Like there are so many other candies that are for sale in the store that's selling Cheekies. Just buy one of those instead of the Cheekies.
Yeah.
Like you should never walk out with that. That's all I'm saying.
I just might quickly add verification, because for those of us listening in Australia may not know what the Cheekies are, because they've only just recently undergone a name change.
Oh, yeah.
They used to be called Chicos for the longest time.
Oh, okay.
So, and it was deemed that maybe wasn't appropriate, so they changed the name to Cheekies. So if anyone's listening going, what are they talking about? Chocolate baby Cheekies. They're the old Chicos.
Got it.
But yes, they are a weird combo. I don't think anyone else has done chocolate and jellies before. It's a bit strange.
No, it was my
you know
first
why?
time.
Hang on. Whoa, hang on. Are you guys trying to palm off? Are you trying to palm off a food podcast onto us now, so we become the food podcast? Is what's happened?
Hey,
we've just been screwed over.
Y'all are a food podcast. We're here as a guest.
It's in the name of your podcast. It's Board Game Barbecue.
True.
You name your podcast after food.
I'll give you that.
I will say though, what was your favorite though? I think Adam, you sort of dug the Lamington, I think, wasn't it?
I did. I enjoyed that.
They were good.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
that was good.
What was your favorite, Matt? If you can remember.
I do. It was the chocolate. It was the
Tim
so there was two kinds of cookies.
Tim Tam.
And it was the one Tim with the Tim Tams. Yes, the regular Tim Tams. Actually, they're both delicious, but I do like the classic, the chocolate ones.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it was discussed because I can't remember. But did you do the thing that we call a Tim Tam Slam?
So we didn't actually end up. Yeah, yep. We did.
I heard you talking about it, but. Yeah, okay. So you bite the two corners off, like adjacent to each other, and then use it like a straw. It's phenomenal. I'm telling you now.
I've had it before. I've had it before because I have some friends that live here that lived in Australia, and they have introduced me to the Tim Tam Slam before, and they were like, "This is what you have to do." And I was like, okay, so I tried that. And then they introduced me to Vegemite. And that was the second time Vegemites made me throw up. So I tried it again on the podcast, and that was 3 for 3. That stuff's strong.
Yeah. Don't have to do it anymore. You're done.
All right.
Nope.
So we thought an interesting list might be your top 3, because we were trying to keep away from food, just so you guys know. Top 3 favorite cartoons that you grew up with.
Oh, that is a good one.
That's
we always
hard.
make Adam
and we
go
were
first.
I was quite interested to see if we would have any crossovers as well. So I think that possibly we might get 1 or 2, but we'll see. Mitch, why don't you go first with your number 3?
Me first. We're going to let Adam
so
off the
glad
hook,
it's
are
not
we?
me. I'm so glad it's not me.
Well, we can ridicule you for 10 or 15 minutes, Mitch, and then we haven't got enough time for everyone else, so we can just move on. So it's fine.
Yeah, right. All right. I'm going to go with number 3 is going to be Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo episodes that featured Scrappy-Doo. I was a bit of a fan. I liked Scrappy's attitude. Yeah, I like the the little bit of a bit of mongrel that Scrappy had in him. So that's going to be my number 3. My number 2,
and you sit here and dare call Dan old.
Oh dear, yeah. Dan is old. I think he was one of the Eternals, wasn't he? But my number 2 is Mask. I don't know if you guys ever remember a cartoon called Mask. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which
wait,
was
is it the same mask with the cars and the drivers with the masks?
Yeah. Rhino was the big rig.
Yep, love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
like
said
helicopter,
some really
the
bad
Kawasaki.
things about Mask.
Yeah, Adam has come out as a non-masker.
I have been unmasked as someone who doesn't appreciate Mask, and I have been blistered for it by my
What is your
peer
problem
group.
with Mask? Why don't you like Mask?
It's okay. So there's Transformers, which we'll talk about maybe later, and then there's a poor man's Transformers, which was like Voltron, and then there's a homeless man's Transformers, and that's Mask.
Yeah, the toys were good, but
a semi truck. Oh, where have we seen that before? Anyway,
I liked the motorbike that turned into a helicopter.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Rad.
Yeah,
it was bright green and the Kawasaki looking thing.
But it wasn't. See, it was better than Transformers. It wasn't just about the masks had their own powers as well. It wasn't just about the transforming vehicles.
Yeah, true.
You know,
it was almost Iron Man-esque. You know, like they put the helmets on and they had
great.
those like HUD displays.
Yeah. No, that was good. I like it.
Yeah.
It's
I think as well. I'm pretty sure there's a dubbed R-rated version.
It was like G.I. Joe meets the Transformers, and in that sense, if you told me that, I'd be like, "Oh, I want to see that."
Yeah.
But then I saw it, and it didn't move the needle for me. That's all. It's fine. I'm not going to yuck your yum anymore. Enjoy it, buddy. That's all you.
And at number one, I've kind of, I don't know if this is against the rules, but I've got two that are tied.
Okay,
do it.
I've got the X-Men.
Oh,
if you remember that X-Men cartoon,
the 90s one. It's coming back as well.
Yeah,
it's coming back later this year.
Yep.
So,
and the other one is the Thundercats.
Oh, I like the Thunder. I was a Thundercats guy.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my list. Couldn't split the
good list.
Yep,
it's great.
Who's next, 80?
Go for it, Adam. You go next.
Oh,
I can see the stress.
Okay, it is. There's a lot of stress because I've got 4 and I don't know which one to leave out. And
just do what I did and double up on one number.
Yeah. So here's what we're gonna do. We're definitely gonna say, as far as time spent with it, one of them is younger than the others in terms of like as Adam growing up. Younger Adam absolutely loved the Smurfs.
Me too. That's fair. I did too.
Smurfs were awesome. Now, if I go back and watch it, there are some real problematic things with the Smurfs.
Yes.
And one is Jokey Smurf. Jokey Smurf like sends people bombs in the mail, which it turns out is terrorism. And so we kind of don't really, we're not okay with that anymore.
Yeah.
But Smurfs kind of have that same sort of appeal that young adult fiction has, where like a character is only allowed to have one trait. And so Brainy can only be smart. He can't also be clumsy. Like clumsy's clumsy. That's his thing. And so like he doesn't get to also be good looking. That's Handsome Smurf, who was talk about that guy, Vanity Smurf or whatever his name was. And then there's, there's some other problematic there's some things I don't get. Smurfs are 3 apples tall. Okay, so I'm just trying to imagine. So 3 apples tall, and then which is a super weird measurement. That is very American as a measurement. That's 47 dishwashers long. Like we just, I don't know why we can't just stick to actual measurements, but 3 apples tall. And then
which type of apple?
Doesn't matter. All it said was 3 apples. And here's what I love. They have these mushroom houses that if you see them in the house, this mushroom is at least 8 by 8, like 8. Like it's 2 meters by 2 meters. If it's a centimeter, it's 2 meters by 2 meters. Like it's huge. Okay, this mushroom, and they are beneath the great oak, which I want to point out. The great oak is massive in the show compared to the houses. You could see the great oak from space. I want to be clear how big this tree must be just to scale. And Gargamel can't find it to save his life. That guy's an idiot. Okay, like I'm not scared of him at all. So, but still, Smurfs make my list. They're in. I'm then gonna go with, because you took Thundercats, Mitch. I'm gonna go the other one that I'm deciding on, and that is He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. If you remember, He-Man's actually Prince Adam.
Mm-hmm.
True.
He is.
So, as a kid, how do you not get more excited about a character named with your name? Like, I was like, yes, I am.
If you're role playing that in the playground, you're like, I'm Adam. It's me, so I get to be him
Prince
straight
Adam,
away.
it's me.
Are you still as excited even when the character is like the absolutely, completely useless, ineffective version of the...
100%. Love it. So He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is going to be in my 2 slot. And then I don't know if this should be number 1 or not, but I can tell you I watched the snot out of DuckTales.
That's good.
So,
DuckTales is good, man.
Yeah.
DuckTales was great. I watched every episode multiple times because that show just don't quit. And it had a theme song that I could still sing every word of today.
Yeah, we just became best friends, Adam, because my number 1 just got previewed. So we'll get there in a second.
Righto, Matt. Well, it's over to you, buddy.
Yeah, so I'll go. So my 1 and 2, well, not number 1, it's actually number 2, but my 1 and 2 are rock solid. I had to think really hard about 3. I want to do a quick shout out to Inspector Gadget because I watched a ton of it. And that's gonna be that's an honorable mention. But also Mask and He-Man, all of them. I watched all of them. But Inspector Gadget was like one of the ones that I loved. My number 3, and I was kind of going by volume, and that is Looney Tunes. I watched endlessly Looney Tunes. And speaking of problematic cartoons, Looney Tunes, go back and watch those old episodes. There's a lot going on.
If you can find them, they can put those in the vault.
Yep. So that would be my number 3. Number 2 is DuckTales because I love it. Still love it. I did watch the reboot. It was pretty good. And then my number 1 is Scooby-Doo. It was my favorite show as a kid. Probably my favorite show now. And the early 2000s, where they like kind of did this running arc of episodes, is fantastic. If you go back and find it, it was like they were in like the Crystal Cove or whatever, and all the episodes were kind of built around that. And it had this sort of overarching storyline they were following, like with this kind of like the big bad guy that was overseeing all the small, we'll say episodic bad guys. Super well done, and it was just long enough ago that like they have a girl they call Hot Dog Water, which is the meanest nickname in the history of television. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, nothing is meaner than calling this poor young lady Hot Dog Water, and the joke being like she's so boring and weird. I don't even know why it's like that, but it's so mean. And but it's a excellent cartoon, so totally worth your time even as adults.
Yeah, right. And you're gonna round us out, 80.
Yeah, I'm surprised this one didn't get mentioned by either Mitch or maybe even Adam because of their affiliation with the Western theme. But my honorable mention at the start here will be Brave Star. I don't know if you guys ever caught Brave Star, but so good.
Captain Brave Star? He had the horse.
He had the horse. Yeah, it was. I think the horse was called Tex Hex or something. I can't remember. I don't remember the name of the horse actually. I think it was made by a company called Tex Hex.
This didn't make it to our side of the world. It's just like this one wasn't.
Okay. You should check it out. It's weird but great. It's like a post-apocalyptic Mad Max version of a Western, but with like really cool tech. So yeah, it was really good. Also, just real quick, I'll just skip over it.
The same world that Boone Lake is in. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
Since this is a board game podcast, it's the same world that Boone Lake is in.
Yeah.
Is it Old West? Is there circuitry on everything? Yep.
That's it. And I will just a quick honorable mention to Jace and the Wheeled Warriors, which has the best opening of any of those kind of 80s nostalgia shows. I thought that was fantastic. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that.
No,
just Google Jace and the Wheeled Warriors opening theme or whatever and just watch it. Because if that doesn't get you like 80s, like pumped up like the good old like 80s rock songs does, it's brilliant. But anyway, those are 2 quick honorable mentions. My number 3 is actually Visionaries, Knights of Magic. I don't know.
You're going completely out of left field here. Never heard of this. I don't know what planet you grew up on.
Well,
what were y'all watching back home in England?
Well, like the Visionaries was really interesting because it came with this toy line. They all came with toy lines, right? We were of the generation of like the toys were the money maker and the show was an advert for the toys. Like I've watched many a documentary where they say that. But these toys were phenomenal. Like if you get to look at them up, they're really cool. They actually have like these holograms, under their chest. So like you could see like right into their bodies and they were like a magic. So all the magic used to come out of here, but they all had different animals affiliated with their magic staffs, and these animals used to come out and fight, and there was all this like psychedelic kind of cool stuff. They did a reissue of a comic book series, I think, where they fought or were featured with the Transformers a few years ago. So yeah, Visionaries, check it out. It's very cool. They are just one of these 80s ones that came out for like 1 season or 2 seasons, then disappeared. But it's one that I've watched many times since. My number 2 is part of the reason why I got into Marvel Comics and loved that all my life, and that was the X-Men animated show. Like, I mean, that soundtrack. I remember as well that our family bought an amplifier just a few weeks before that came out, and it had stereo sound. And I remember the cartoon would come up and say in stereo, and it was like, that was the height of our technology like back then. It was so rad. There was no Dolby surround. It was like, this cartoon's in stereo, yo, like get it out, get on it. And it was brilliant. Like we used to crank that on a Saturday morning. So good. So
we'll play this through more than one channel.
Yeah, that's it. And then my one that I've actually sat down and watched the majority, this is my number 1, sorry, that I've actually sat down with Finn and watched the majority of it. I've rewatched this umpteenth times. It has got movies and stuff in the same universe. It is so well written and such a good representation of what the Batman actually is. And that is the Batman animated series. Like, it's got episodes in there that are almost Shakespearean and just fantastic. So, yeah,
if Ben were here, he would be saying that and Teen Titans.
Yeah, okay.
If Ben were here, he would give you those 2.
Yeah, that Batman animated series was a little, I think I'm probably a little bit older than you, Adrian. So that was probably college for me by the time it was out, or by the time I watched it.
Right.
So I loved it. It just wasn't my childhood. It was something I picked up later in life, but it was just so good. Like, everything about it.
Couple of also rans that I wish we might have included. Rescue Rangers, Chippendales Rescue Rangers was pretty solid, and then Gummy Bears.
And the movie was also, the movie came out last year, right? The Chippendale,
right.
The Chippendale movie. That was pretty good.
And Gummy Bears was pretty solid. That probably could have been mentioned. Now, if we go a little more modern, SpongeBob, and then I think Phineas and Ferb is one of the funniest shows I've ever watched. Like, I think it's hilarious. Okay, oh my gosh, it's on Disney and it's brilliant. Phineas and Ferb, and it's made by the same guy who made SpongeBob. Okay, so
yeah, right,
like
same sort of feel,
but it's not as wacky, but it's super fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a great show too. How old's Finn, Adrian?
7.
Oh, perfect. It's Phineas and Ferb. I mean, it's a Disney show, so I gotta assume it's out there somewhere. And it is super good. It's a little sciencey, a little inventory. They do a great job of keeping. It's a nice tight story, 20 minutes, whatever. But it's excellent. They
got a pet platypus who is also a secret agent.
Yeah, it's really well done.
There is one of the best villains on TV, Dr. Doofenshmirtz, who is hilarious. I'm telling you, I still love it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
All right. So I think with that, we'll move on to just a couple of announcements and news that we have to talk about. As a podcaster, it's quite difficult sometimes. You try and do an impromptu ad to get a little bit of a vibe going when you're recording, and the 2 people recording with you are completely brainless and don't pick up on your subtle clues. Have you ever had that happen, Adrian?
Well, I would have. But I was too busy shopping at adventgames.com.au.
Adventgames.com.au, they apparently have an absolutely amazing range of games to choose from.
They definitely do. I've actually bought a bunch of stuff from there, especially over the Christmas period. It's always really good service as well. Like, you can always message Advent and they will give you replies back pretty much straight away. Dean's an absolute great guy. He does community building stuff in Sydney. See him at game days.
Sorry, I'm late, guys. I was just on my phone reading the latest newsletter from Advent Games. What are you guys talking about?
Well, funnily enough, we're talking about adventgames.com.au. They always are the first to have really good pre-orders available. If you're ever wondering about thinking, I want to get that game when it comes to Australia, head over to adventgames.com.au. You can almost be certain that they'll have a pre-order option there. You can lock it in and know that you'll be one of the first to get it as soon as it's available.
All right, what was that? We'll start again. I'm going to head over there right now.
It's www.adventgames.com.au.
I'm on there now. Done.
From primarily, we've already touched on it. We've just crossed our 3-year anniversary for the Board Game Barbecue.
Woo!
So really awesome having you guys on for our 3rd anniversary edition of the pod. We've had some great responses from the community as well. It's just, as I said, we touched on it earlier in the show, but just overwhelming to see the responses from people. I think Jules put a post up on our Facebook page saying, just let us know what you've got out of the community. And some of the feedback from people has been great. Just to be able to know that we've been able to bring people together.
It's been emotional.
And create an environment. It has.
Sure.
I think you got a bit emotional yesterday, didn't you, Adi?
I'm always emotional. It's me. Like I cry at anything. But yeah, when I saw some of those comments, I was like, oh, hold me, MJ. Like I was loving it. That's really nice.
Yeah, so thanks to everybody who's been a part of that, and really appreciate if you've come along and joined us for the ride, and hopefully we'll be able to do at least another 3 years more.
Because much like Motor City Gameworks, right, that's changed your guy's life, right? Like you are doing different things. It's a life-changing thing that's kind of become part of your, or I would say, day-to-day life even, right, for the most part. And it's the same for us with the podcast. It's almost like our day-to-day life. We are constantly communicating with publishers, designers, engaging with the community, hanging out, playing games, talking to Mitch, like all that kind of stuff. But for me especially, like it was a massive, it's been just fantastic. Like I said it on the Facebook post. I know that everyone uses Facebook. Yeah, just a massive thank you to everybody that listens and everyone that's interacted with us over these past 3 years. Like we are eternally grateful for that. For me, myself, like it's the most settled I've ever been in my life. I'm a bit of a nomad. Like I was a backpacker for many years, traveling. I'd stay in a country for a year, move back, and constantly never felt settled. But I've never felt so much like so settled in all my life. Like I'm like happy, roots in the ground. Yeah. So just huge thanks to everybody that's been a massive part of that. And we continue to hopefully give some semi-decent content somewhere along the way. So we'll try.
Alrighty, and a couple of other things, just quick mentions. We do have a couple of board game days coming up. So we have the Melbourne Game Day on June 17th at Preston Town Hall. Tickets are on sale via Eventbrite. You can grab them now. And on the same day, we're actually, first time we have 2 game days on the same day in Sydney, June 17th at the Castle Hill RSL. Get your tickets for those as well. And don't wait. So many people tend to wait until the last minute buy their tickets, and then they realise that they've sold out and they miss out. So don't wait. If you're planning on going, buy your tickets now and don't miss out. Don't be stuck on that dreaded wait list. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next segment of our show, which is the question of the pod. So we generally ask a question of the pod for each episode, and then we do a bit of a recap on the next episode. The one that we have for this week, and I don't know if you guys are going to be able to contribute too much, maybe from a design perspective, but is what appeals to you about solo gaming? Now, I've spoken, making up words as I go, spoken ad infinitum about how much I like solo gaming, so I won't go into it from my perspective. Did any of you guys want to contribute to your sort of thoughts on solo gaming, Adrian?
Well, I also been talking, and I spoke about it last week briefly, and I think like I reading some of the comments has given me a completely different perspective on how important solo gaming is for people, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of like one of those things where you don't realize how important it is until you read other people's stuff and see it from a different perspective other than your own. Even though your own is obviously important to you, but it's not until you see a broader sort of spectrum of answers and go, actually, this is an incredibly important thing to have. So that's the only thing I wanted to bring up. And we'll read out some comments in a second. So
just to touch on that, Adrian, and I, it's not something that I personally do. It's just I'm not super interested in it. It's not something that I've tried a little bit. I'd rather read a book or play a video game. That's me. That said, as a designer, I've really started to realize how passionate and committed that community is, right? Even within BGG. And, when we really, we kind of went backwards and retconned a solo mode for Fleet Dice because it didn't exist when the game came out because we weren't cognizant of its need to exist. And then, by the time we got to Three Sisters, we knew that already. So since then, we built them into all of our games. And because they're honestly, it's a fantastic community. They love games. They want to talk about games. They love interacting with each other. They talk to each other about their plays and how they go. And it's just, I think it's critical, honestly, especially in, sort of a medium weight gaming level and up to the heavier games, that you consider that, because I think that crowd is just one that really loves the fact that you think about them, right? They don't,
Right.
they do their own designs as well, like they do mods and things like that. But I think they appreciate when it's built into the game and it's clearly part of the design process, not a patch after the fact. So, we've taken a lot of time and effort to make sure that our solo modes are, make sense in context of the game, but provide an experience that, that crowd will like.
Yes, and I'm not a big solo gamer either. However, I have a couple games that I will play solo very happily. And this is going to sound a little self-serving, but usually they're roll and writes. I don't mind solo roll and write very much at all. I enjoy that because I think it's because it's so easy to set it up and it's so easy to run it. And so that is sort of the appeal there for me. But my favorite solo game is actually Fleet the Dice game, which I had nothing to do with making it. That's the one in the series that came before me for sure. And then there's I had a little bit on the tail end to do with some of the expansion stuff and the things that were going on with Three Sisters. But in particular, I really enjoy Fleet Dice's solo system. And then the other one that and this is, once again, sorry, I love French Quarter's solo system. Like, I think it is so fun. And here's the deal. We came up with that and it was so much fun. We included it as a variant for a way to play the actual game at multiplayer counts as well. Because we were having so much fun with that solo system that we were like, hold on, this could be fun even with other people at the table. And so it's one that has really, it hits the sweet spot for me.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Excellent. All right, well, we'll read out a couple of answers from our community of people who have responded to the question since the last pod. Lee Hath says, the opportunity to get lost in a big, deep, sprawling game and be able to take 15 minutes thinking about my turn with zero guilt about holding up play for others is a good one. So that's good. Jess Rachel says, 1, she plays and learns at her own leisure. 2, no pressure about getting the rules wrong and being twats about it. 3, get to learn all the ins and outs better than with others. 4, deep dive into the story if there is one. And 5, feel way more confident when it comes to teaching other people the game. They're all good points, all valid points.
I do find that quite hard. Like, if you don't know the rules incredibly well and you're trying to like muddle your way through a rule book to check something, there's like this horrible amount of pressure on you, right, to do it. And when you're doing it with friends, it's okay. But when you're doing it with people you don't know, it can be terrifying. And people look at you like, oh, they don't even know the rules. And I get really anxiety driven about that for sure.
Yeah, my Midwestern white guy confidence makes me completely oblivious to that. I'll just plow through a rule book with people watching. I get stuff wrong. None of that bothers me in the least. But you're right, Adrian.
Yeah, we did play it wrong.
Yeah, it happens. Like I'll skip a page and be like, whatever, we'll figure it out later. But I actually appreciate that. You're right. People really want to have, to your point, their own pace of learning, and solo gaming does that.
Sure. Yeah, we had a couple of answers from Twitter, and this is kind of one that, definitely interests me. So we had @WolfTable say, just being able to play games in my own home. As a disabled bloke with no clubs or shops around me or friends or family who play games, without solo, I wouldn't be able to play anything. Yeah, so that was definitely kind of something that I didn't, selfishly didn't even really think of, but it's definitely now in the forefront of my brain of like, that's a massive importance.
It falls in line with a couple of people I listen to. A couple of podcasts I would listen to were people who lived. They were not living in the country they were born in. They were, whether they were doing mission work or whether they were doing a part of a job that had them overseas, and they didn't know anyone else. They didn't speak the language well enough to explain the rules to any of the games that they played. And so it was like, if it's not me and my partner playing, it's me alone. And so having a 1-player or 2-player game, a game that was good at 1 or 2, was critical to them.
Yeah.
And that was just hearing that perspective and then reading that on Twitter. I also noted that when I was like, yeah, this is a cool thing. Like, this gives this person, the opportunity to have fun where they're at and without any other access to it. So yeah, absolutely.
We also had Kira Moon say, solo board gaming is now one of my self-healing therapies. Every aspect counts, from the tactile feelings of placing tiles, meeples, cards, and dice to enjoying the story I made with the game. Along with the decisions I made, it helps me focus and my mood as a neurodivergent. So yeah,
awesome.
That's also pretty awesome. So
man, I just love that games. I love that games do that let people. This is why that gatekeeping conversation, we have to have it, right? We need to have space at the table for everyone because it's such a cool opportunity for people to feel like, here's some fun I can have.
Yep.
Right. And that's that's such a cool part of making games. It's one of the things we care a lot about is that there's, I don't know, just that people can have fun and be welcome to have that fun. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we'll move on then to the next question of the pod, which will be put out to our community members to answer between now and the next episode. And sticking with the theme from earlier, we're going to ask, what childhood cartoon would you like to see made into a board game?
Oh.
So, what childhood cartoon IP would you like to see made into a board game? I'm going to say... Well, and
many
also
have,
with
right?
that,
Many have. Like, there's the deck builder
have.
For Transformers. There's obviously the Marvel games, but just try and think. I think of like maybe a re-implementation of something like that, or just something completely different.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with Thundercats, but I'm also going to go with the Thundercats campaign narrative based story game. So it's not just a battle system.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tie some of the storylines from the show in as well.
Could call it like Jaws of the Lion.
Jaws of the Lion-O.
That's right. He got it. He got it. Reskin that. Jaws of the Lion-O. That's great. Yeah.
Any other
definitely.
ideas?
I would like to do, because a lot of the cartoons that I love wouldn't lend themselves to game styles that I love playing. But I would say that, my first thought was, my favorite game of all time, and it's a total outlier from everything else that I like, is Galaxy Trucker. I love Galaxy Trucker. I think it
blows my mind every time you say it.
I know. But
I know it's coming, and it still stuns me every time.
Because everything else I love is nothing like it, and it's not like anything else that I love. But it's so good. So like started to think to myself, like, if you gave me a Looney Tunes like reskin where like Wile E. Coyote was building his contraption, and then Roadrunner comes in and just basically blows it up, right? Like Galaxy Trucker style. Give me something along those lines. I would totally play it.
That'd be cool.
Okay, it's not one of the ones I chose, but I think Inspector Gadget could be an incredible IP to work with.
Yeah. Yep.
I think there's so much fun you could do with that in so many different genres of games. Man, that one's pretty strong.
That's up there. Sounds good. I think. Yeah, there'd be some. There's a lot of different ways you could work that.
Right.
Yeah. 80, what about you?
Well, I feel like a lot of these cartoons would lend themselves to either like a story narrative game, like you said, Mitch, or like an RPG, kind of like the Avatar Airbender RPG that's upcoming and all that kind of stuff. But I would like to just flip all that on its head and not do any of that stuff, because that's not the games that I traditionally would like. But I would like to see let's say Avengers versus the Justice League, right? So you have the two different styles of thing, or even just say the Avengers versus the X-Men if you can't get both IPs. I know it's pretty hard to get both the IPs, right? So we can keep with the one if it gets a bit too pricey. But I want to see that as a heavy Euro game, right? Where all your workers count and each worker has like its own unique bonus action for when it gets placed on the table as its worker placement spot. But let's say if you had the Flash would be able to take two actions of the same action. And we would have Quicksilver on the Marvel side as the example. And like a Superman can get 12 resources rather than 5 resources. And the same would be on the other side for Captain Marvel, right? So we would do something like that.
Does that mean that like Hawkeye would be pretty ineffective and useless in the game?
You get to take one resource.
Yeah, you get one resource.
One space and take one action. Like it is, that is the ultimate. Like if you're not a beginner, play that. Everyone else gets to play a real superhero.
Yeah.
Well, even so, like that could be part of the meta that is your weakest action, and he just takes a normal action, doesn't get the bonus. Maybe he has no bonus affiliated with him, but just something like that. Something
draws
that
a card.
Shouldn't.
Thanks, Hawkeye.
but Hawkeye, when he does attack, never misses.
He doesn't miss. That's right.
He doesn't have many attacks in him, but he never misses.
No dice rolls.
That's right.
Maybe he could be. Maybe he could be like the retired Hawkeye that comes into Civil War, where he's like, doesn't he say he's been playing golf or something? Like maybe he could be really good at golf in the game. It's like Hawkeye golf rolled him right. Can we not do that somehow?
We've got a game that we've designed and that is probably about ready. And we're just trying to find the right publishing home for it. But it spent some time as, boy, if we could get the Avatar IP, this would be great. Like we would have, because it's this Euro Ameritrash hybrid that is just a blast. Because there's a worker placement kind of phase where you're getting stuff, and then there is just a dice chucking, fight these baddies, and then there's a fight one another. It's hilariously fun in all the right ways, and it would be so easy to make it a 3 versus 1 with the Fire Nation being the one, and just use the Avatar IP. And we've talked about that so many times. So if there's any publishers listening who have who have access to an Avatar IP that want a very cool anyway, enough commercial.
I just want to mix things that don't traditionally go together. Do you know what I mean? Like I would like to see that done, and done really well as well, to people, actual like heavy Euro gamers being like, this is really good. Like, do you know what I mean? Not just going, oh, this is just lame. But they
probably wouldn't play it because just the IP alone would probably turn off all the.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. Like that's what I would like to see overcome. That'd be the main goal.
All right. So it doesn't matter what we think; it matters what you think. So that question will go out to the community for them to just contribute. Have your say. Tell us what childhood cartoon you'd like to see made into a board game, and what type of game it would be. And we'll go through and we'll read some of those out on the next show. With that, I'd just like to take a quick shout out to some of our Patreons and thank them for their support. This week we're thinking Dana Devison, Harry Manassian, Jeff Sherples, and Joe Pepper. So thank you guys, and thanks to everyone who supports us through Patreon. If you wanted to do that, you can just go to Patreon, search for Board Game Barbecue, and you can sign on and join up for all the extra content that we do, the bonus pods that we record, and any of the other shenanigans that goes along, including we've got a Patreon party on tonight where we are playing a whole lot of Jackbox games on Discord tonight. So there's all sorts of different reasons why you can join up to the Patreon. But if you can't, that's okay. You can support us by just giving us a good review or joining our Facebook and Discord communities and participating there and telling your friends about us. Just tell everyone about us and get us listening. Adrian, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just on that last thing there, we often get submitted questions before we do interviews and have guests and stuff on the show. And we actually had a question that we didn't get to read out in our talking of random stuff, but I just wanted to add, Dirty Habanero asked you guys, why is Detroit pizza the best? I mean, I don't particularly like pizza, but Detroit style is pretty dang good. So what is a Detroit style? Because I want to know what that is for a start.
It's the best. Now, here's the thing. So it's heavy and it hits you hard. So you got to come in, you got to go into it knowing it's not like your classic, I'm not sure, frankly, what y'all are doing in Australia or UK with pizza, but I'm going to assume it's your classic round, kind of standard pizza, right? So what Detroit does, and it's got its lineage in the automotive industry, and it's a steel pan, and you put more grease than any human being should ever put on their food in a pan, and then the dough will climb up the pan, and then you put cheese around the edge, and it gets like crispy and burned. And then the whole trick is that the crust is not. It's thick in the sense that there's like a good half inch, 3/4 of an inch to it, but it's not bready. It's not like biting into a piece of bread. It's like a little bit crispy and a little bit airy, and then the cheese is on top, and there's sauce and pepperoni, all the normal pizza stuff. But the real key is is that crispy edge, and the way that that crust really kind of keeps itself being thick without being a piece of bread, and it's so good. It's the point now actually where I grew up with it, right? I've been in Detroit my whole life, and we've been going there. The first place that did it started in the 30s and 40s, well, 50s really, and it's now where you see it in other parts of the country, right, in the U.S. specifically, because it's gotten popular. And you have to listen. You when you go eat Detroit style pizza, you're not following your diet that day. You're not there to eat healthy.
Yeah.
You're settling in to have a 2 or 3. Not more than 3. I'm a big boy and I can't eat more than 3. And you're getting it's a hearty, heavy, greasy, delicious. Just it's the best.
And it's a square. It's a square.
And
so
you
want
nice.
You want the corners, those corners where all that cheese is, and on that man, that'll set you right. Now, usually the sauce is on the top. Usually
above the cheese. Yep.
And so cheese on the bread, sauce and toppings on the cheese, and then sauce on top. Fantastic.
Nice.
It's not like deep dish. It's not like a deep like Chicago style. Like it's still its own thing.
Different.
And I want to shout out to the name Dirty Habanero. That's pretty awesome as a name, just in general.
Yeah.
So I was pretty proud of that. But yeah, I love Detroit style. I'm a transplant. I'm from the South. I lived in New Jersey for a little bit too, and fell in love with New York style. That big thin slice that you can fold and eat as the grease just like I love that still, but now we've got a place that does that really, really well. But when I have folks come to town, I always take them to get Detroit style. We just did that with some family in town. They love it.
On that note, if anyone listening to this has a Detroit style franchise pizza place and they want to sell a franchise to us out here, we can probably talk to them and try and bring it over here, because I would love to eat that. That sounds lush.
It's fantastic. Great.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll move on now to our segment, Swearing of an Oath.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about this.
Oh, we know. We know you forgot.
We know you did.
We know you forgot.
We know.
Welcome back.
So, yes, we have our Swear and Oath segment, and yes, we've done our homework. We went back and listened to the old episodes, and we know what was sworn. Before we get to Adam and Matt, let's go to Adrian. You were working on an oath. I know you've been, I don't even know where yours is because you've done 5 in a row back to back. So
yeah,
you've been pretty busy.
I'm struggling. I'm not going to lie, but I have the rat catcher out over here. I've read the rule book. I watched the video. So even though I said last week I intend to play it as soon as we hang up, I ended up getting busy and doing stuff, but I am playing it. And from what I saw in the video, man, it's a great little design. Like, it looks fantastic. I'm super actually quite pumped to play it. So have you guys heard of this game or played this game, Matt or Adam?
I heard the name. I've only heard of it passingly.
Yeah. I have not. Go, Mitch.
It's a solo only game made by an Australian designer by the name of Matt Aslan. He did the design and all of the artwork and everything all himself as well. So it's pretty impressive. It's I don't even know how to describe it in terms of like comparing it to other games. It's kind of like tower defense, I guess, because you play a rat catcher who's trying to clear the city out of rats, but then every turn more waves of rats just keep coming and coming and coming. So you've got that whole challenge of trying to stay on top of it and not get killed. But then you've also got like a build up. You can build up your abilities and skills when you find magic cheese. So there's a little bit of RPG-ish sort of improvement to that as well. It's a good game. So that's where you're at.
So yeah, I intend to. Yeah, and I've got DEI, which I'm booking in with Matt Woods, who unfortunately has fallen down with a bit of COVID, so he hasn't been able to come over to play it, but we intend to get that played pretty soon. So yeah,
cool.
That's it.
Well, I'll do mine next, which was to play a new game that I just recently picked up called Fighters of the Pacific, which is like a aerial combat war game of World War II. Yeah. I kind of dabble in both worlds in terms of do a little bit of wargaming, and I've played it. Yeah, I played it, so my oath was succeeded. I only played the tutorial mission, like the very first mission, two-handed. So you're playing the US versus the Japanese in the Pacific, and it's a pretty good game. It's different to any other sort of game, and different to what I was expecting, in that it's pretty simple to play, but from what I can tell, just from the tutorial mission, is that it's very heavily dependent on positioning, which I imagine is probably true to the theme with aerial combat, right?
Right.
So you're trying to move around behind your opponent because you can only attack forwards. All the movement, you must take your full move. Like each of the planes will move at different speeds. So exactly.
Well, I mean, that's thematic, right? You can't just put on the brakes, right?
Exactly. So you kind of like, oh man, now I'm too close to these other planes, so I can't really move into the position that I want because I have to move the full 3 spaces. And then there's also a decision space between high altitude and low altitude. You can't attack planes at different altitudes if you're at one altitude and vice versa. So that also becomes you're the hunted and the hunter at the same time. You're trying to say, well, let me drop down to that altitude so I can attack them, but then that also makes me vulnerable to attacks from them if I'm not in the right position. They're trying to get behind you, you're trying to get behind them. Yeah, so it's different to anything else I've played in that regard. There's no randomness at all in the game. There's no dice rolls for combat. It's basically, if you get stuck, you finish your moves and you're in the line of fire of another plane, you're going to get hit. So that positioning becomes really, really important. And the rule book for a war game is like 5 pages long. So it's not overly overbearing.
No, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not doing your head in. So I know some people will go, aerial combat in World War II, not my thing. But if you're looking for something to scratch that itch, and you're not looking for something super, super heavy, it's quite fun. Yeah.
Would you say it's like a gateway into
that war gaming? Yeah.
Well, that's a cool space to be in. I bet that's a nice space to design in.
Yeah, I think it is, and I know
because the war game community is so passionate about what they're doing, and so to be able to build that gateway, even into what a lot of us would consider to be kind of a days gone by kind of gaming, but it's totally not.
No.
But a lot of us that just play Euros or play hobby games kind of look at them and go, oh yeah, that's the old timer, but it's not. And so to see that gateway done effectively is really cool.
Well, that's the thing. And there's a lot of people, I'm on a couple of Facebook pages and stuff for wargaming and things, and a lot of questions. You get a lot of people coming in going, oh, I've been playing other games in the hobby for a while. I want to dip my toe into wargaming, but it's difficult to do because it is a big step. A 3.5 weighted war game on BGG is not the same as a 3.5 weighted. There's a big sort of difference, and people definitely have a bit of trepidation, I think, about getting into the wargaming side of things because it can get really heavy really quickly.
And I think there's also some intimidation of, I'm going to be a beginner, and the people who play these already know how to play these really well because it is its own genre, right?
Yeah.
And so it iterates on itself. And so I feel like I'm going to be an anchor that everyone sees who the weakest link is. And I don't want to feel dumb. And so I think there's that trepidation that people don't want to go into the room like that. And so once again, this one might be a really good place to start. It sounds like it to me. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I think for someone who's, if the theme's your thing, if you enjoy that sort of theme and you like the idea of an aerial sort of dogfight type scenario, then this is right in that wheelhouse. It's cool. Definitely a good one. My oath moving forward, I haven't really thought about this. My oath moving forward, I'm after this recording, I'm going around to Dean's place. Dean is the guy who owns Advent Games, our sponsor. He's having a game day, so I'm going to swear an oath to take. I'll take a bunch of new trick-taking games that I've been picking up. I've been getting into the trick-taking thing, so I'll swear an oath to teach a few new trick-taking games to some folks at that game day who maybe haven't done the trick-taking genre before. That'll be my oath for next pod.
Good.
Cool. All right. Now, here we go. Let's go. Adam looks terrified, so I'm going to go to Matt first, just to make Adam sweat for a bit longer.
Thank
you. But, Matt, do you remember what your oath was?
No.
Okay, so
I should have gone back and listened, and I did not.
Okay, well, don't feel bad because we forget week to week. You guys have been like over a year, so we'll let you off for forgetting. But your oath was to play a game called Neom.
I did play Neom.
With me?
With Adam.
Yeah, right, okay.
It was fine.
To quote Matt, it's a game.
Yeah, so... I had got that game for Christmas, and I had not played it, and I think it even had maybe made it through a whole nother Christmas unplayed. And I don't have a super deep shelf of shame or shelf of opportunity, whatever. I don't buy a lot of games. Adam buys a lot of games. A couple other friends of ours buy a lot of games that I play with. I don't play a lot of games here at home, with other people. My parents will play a little bit with me. My wife will play a few games. So I'll usually drag my parents into the easier stuff, and they're pretty willing. But for the most part, I'm not buying new games because I don't have an opportunity to play new games right now. So that was a game I received as a present. I sort of was like literally, my mom every year, she still buys us, her adult children presents, which is great. So I usually check off, 4 or 5 games for her to choose from. She'll pick a few of them, whatever, and I'll unwrap them on Christmas. It's, it's fun. So that was one that I had thrown on the list. And I try to make sure there are things that she can get, from, there's not really a friendly local game store close by us.
Target or Kmart or something.
Yeah, Target, and even Amazon, whatever, things like that. The things that are available are pretty easy for her. So, Neon was one that was, had been released and was available like on Amazon or whatever. So, I didn't really know much about it except for that I had seen it because it was from Lookout, and we had our Pete Mott's game was from them. So I interact with one of the Lookout folks quite a bit, and it was in their little title block or whatever. So I'm like, sure. Turns out it's just a pretty average tile layer. I do think the theme got in the way a little bit because it was kind of a weird, like, future-y city building, I think is what it was supposed to be. I don't know. It didn't really strike anything super exciting with me. I'm sure it's a great design. There was like a million things you had to read. Like, all the buildings I think there's a lot of unique buildings. So I think it's probably pretty clever over multiple plays, but unfortunately I don't get to play games a ton of times very often. So, for like I think I gave it like 2 or 3 plays, and it was fun every time, but it just never really struck a huge chord with me. So I did play Neon pretty shortly after, by the way. Actually, it was, I did, I think I took it to Adam's house and said, we're playing this. And we did.
Awesome. So great. Would you like to
shout
to
out to Karen, great job. Good pick. It was a fun game.
Yeah. Okay. And would you like to swear another oath for next time?
I would. So, speaking of trick takers, I swear an oath that I'm going to play Scout at least twice because I love it so much, and I played it a lot when I first grabbed it because I was so excited to play it. And then it's just, I haven't got to play games much in the last couple of months except for designing stuff. So I'm going to make sure, and my parents will play that one. My wife likes that one, actually. So I'm going to make sure I, invite them over and get it out a few times.
But I want to jump in. We've had this conversation. Scout's not a trick taker. Scout is a card shedder / ladder climber, Matt. We've talked about this.
It's not a trick taker, but he reminded me of it when he talked about trick taking.
Okay,
that's all.
So speaking of trick taking made you think of other card games that aren't trick takers.
Exactly.
And your oath is you're going to play one of those multiple times.
Mitch talking about taking some card games with him to his game day and teaching them reminded me that, man, I haven't got to play Scout in a while. I downloaded the app. I never really tried it. Again, playing it by myself isn't my thing. So I'm gonna give that a shot.
Scout has an app.
Just to clarify, the games I'll be taking to the game day this afternoon, Scout is not one of them. Because it's not a trick taking game.
It is not a trick taker.
Thank you.
I felt like such a butthead when I said it because I didn't have any clout to back it up. I couldn't say, "Oh, well, it's a shredding game or whatever." I was like, I just don't feel like it's a trick taking game. But Adam has the knowledge to be able to go, "It's a this and a that," and it makes it sound good. Whereas I'm like, I don't know what it is. But yeah, I got to
only because we thought about this fairly recently.
Yeah, fair play.
There has been an argument about what is a trick taker. This goes back a little ways, so there's a little background.
I was in my car and I was going, thank you, it's about time.
I was trying to be inclusive definition wise because some folks. So Ben and I designed a ladder climbing shedding game called Ladder 29 that people have repeatedly referred to as a trick taker. It is not. And at no point was I saying that it was. I was merely saying some folks, for some reason, think of anytime you play more than one card, like into a pile, and they think of them as trick takers. That's all. But y'all are right. It is not. It is a shedding game. I love them both.
It is. It's a fantastic game, though, right? Like, I even got to play that with my son just like last week, and he really enjoyed it. Like, it's good.
The
hardest thing is
Scout's amazing.
Yeah,
Ladder 29 is
got to make sure he doesn't cheat.
Amazing.
Yeah. I got to keep an eye on him for the cards because I see him put them all together.
Oh yeah,
and they come out slowly, and I'm like, has he just slid that one over? Like, so that's the only thing I have to watch. But yeah, it's a great game.
He's getting his hand slights down at a young age.
That's right. The slow turn my cards over move.
It might even get to the point where he just drops them on the floor and goes, "Oh dear, I'll just pick them up and look at them as I put them back in my hands."
Love it.
All right, Adam, over to you. It's the moment of truth. Do you remember what your oath was?
No, what was my oath?
Your oath was to play Reworld.
Oh, I've played it multiple times, taught it to people.
Really? There you go.
There you go.
I actually really enjoy it. I can see why some people don't. I think it does a really neat thing where for like the first half of the game, you're doing one thing, and then you actually flip things over and then do the other thing. And so I really like that there's like two halves of the game. And the first half is like making all your plans. And the second half is seeing how bad you were at making plans. Is kind of how it feels. But it's super cool. I like the scoring on it. I like the whole thing. So Reworld, I'm a Kiesling Kramer guy. I love both those. And it is underrated.
Excellent. And would you like to make a new oath going forward?
Ooh, okay, so this is one that I think I'll be able to keep, but the new oath has to do with Twilight Inscription. Okay, if you're not familiar with this is a roll and write Twilight Imperium. Okay, so it's that, and it is massive. You get 4 full sheets of dry erase stuff that you're working with, and it plays up to 8 players because who doesn't want to play a game with 8 players for hours? And so I have it. I have not played it. I want to play it because roll and writes are kind of the business. And so I like to do my market research. And so I will get Twilight Inscription to the table.
Excellent. All right. Well, we will hold you to that. And for the record, if you want to go back to Ben, and let him know that we're checking in on him as well. His was to play The Legends of Sleepy Hollow.
He has not.
He has not done that.
No.
Well, you can let him know that
there's
he's in trouble.
Reasons, but he has not.
That was a loaded oath. No,
that's not all on him.
Oh, right. Is it still due in August?
It's here, but we have to relearn how to play our own game to play it.
Okay, so, right.
I think his motivation is low.
And they had to do some repairs to the actual product that was put out because it was unplayable in a couple of levels. And so they'd accidentally misprinted a couple of the maps. Right. And so he couldn't have played that one unless he downloaded and printed off the errata, which I am sure he has not.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of the show today, guys. So really much appreciate you guys coming on. It's great to have you on and have a chat. Is there any last shout outs? People want to catch up with you guys, hit you up, listen to the podcast. Where should they go?
Podcast is Motor City Gameworks podcast. You can get it on our website, motorcitygameworks.com. You can pick it up there or with any of the major carriers. You can find us on there. And, if you go to motorcitygameworks.com, you'll see all our games and stuff. On Twitter, I'm at Adam Hill Games. Would love to talk with you there. I interact there most. And so hopefully we can connect.
Yep. At MD Riddlen. So that's MDRIDDLEN. That's kind of my initials with a shout out to my old school screen name. Riddlin, last name being Riddle, joke being Riddlin, I guess. I don't know. I didn't come up with it. So you can find me on Twitter that way. If you look for Matt Riddle, there's a wrestler named Matt Riddle who is much more famous
We
than
had
me.
that, didn't we?
So you get a little.
Didn't we have that? I think we had that. I think we looked you up once a long time ago, and we got the wrestler. We're like, is that him?
Yes.
We couldn't tell.
Every now and then I get a wrestling follow, and they're seriously disappointed after they see me tweet a couple times.
There's an Adam Hill country singer that's sadly not more famous than me. That dude's struggling, but he wants to make it. I believe in him.
Me too. But yeah, so like Adam, right? I'm easy to find there. Love to talk. Love to answer questions. And then, Kickstarter's on Tuesday, May 30th for French Quarter. Please check it out. There is worldwide shipping. It certainly does have a cost because worldwide shipping stinks, but we do the best we can. We promise. Like we try to, a lot of group buys, things like that, to try to accommodate the shipping is the best that we're able to. So please check it out if you're interested. It's the next load of rolling right, and we're pretty proud of it. So give it a go.
And the best communicators in all of Kickstarter, I got to say.
Thank you.
On your campaigns.
Thank you.
Yep, I appreciate that.
Yeah. 80, any last words from you, buddy?
Man, just thanks to everybody for listening over the past 3 years. Thanks to the guys for joining us. And I'll see you guys on the next pod. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening in, and we'll talk to you again next time. Bye.
Have a great night.
See ya.
Bye. Matt, you don't have a camera. We don't have an issue with that, but I just thought I'd ask in case there was a setting that you wanted to change.
Oh, yeah, no, we're good. I'm in bed.
That's fine.
And I'm dressed, but I'm hiding in my bedroom.
Okay.
I want to be clear. It is 8 p.m. here, and Matt is in bed.
Going to bed. I just happen to be currently